Mrs. de Buquicchio, Deputy Secretary General of the Council of Europe, thank you for giving us an update about the Council of Europe's 1 in 5 campaign to stop sexual violence against children. The campaign was launched in November 2010. Could you share your thoughts on the main achievements and successes of the 1 in 5 campaign to date?
Well, in order to answer your question, I should explain that the purpose of this campaign is actually twofold. First of all, we want to promote a ratification of our Convention against sexual exploitation and abuse of children, often referred to as the Lanzarote Convention. And the second purpose of our campaign is to raise awareness and to provide all those who are in contact with children with the necessary tools to prevent and protect children. But that includes also children themselves. They need, above all, the tools to protect themselves. Now, the first dimension of what I mentioned, the ratification process, is actually well underway. We have now 17 member states who have ratified the convention. And that is a great success. Of course, I expect more to come, but it sometimes takes a while because ratification, if it's done seriously, it means that legislation has to be adjusted, new institutions sometimes created, and the fact that some member states take more time than others is not necessarily a bad sign. It means that they take this process very seriously. On the awareness raising, I think that our campaign has also been quite successful. Already the title 1 in 5 attracts media attention about the extent of the phenomenon. People question these figures. Of course, we need to have more figures, but surely you realize that having figures on these very sensitive, difficult issues where children have difficulties and victims have difficulties talking about the issue makes the figures not always reliable. But we have been providing material which also is made available to parents and children so that they can start discussing this very, very sensitive issue. And that, I think, is something, the fact that this has been translated in so many languages, 28 languages for the time being, and that there's much demand for this material, I think shows that our campaign is working.
Could you tell us what the next plans are for the Council of Europe's 1 in 5 campaign?
Well, in promoting the ratification of this convention, we are focusing in particular on those issues which appear to be obstacles for the ratification of the convention. And so we provide expert opinions, providing assistance to our member states in overcoming these difficulties. One of the difficult issues which is touched upon in our convention is, for instance, the issue of pedopornography, the issue of grooming. These are very complex issues which need to be addressed, and some member states have found one way in dealing with them, with these issues. Others have other ways, and I think exchanging information on good practices in this respect is one way of removing these obstacles. So sharing the solutions found is obviously also an answer. We also want to promote more and more partnership with the private sector, and that is particularly important in the context of the awareness raising, but also take the example of the sexual violence against children through the use of internet with private companies. So that's something which we want to develop much further. And what is also very important is that we through the convention see the need to develop very much training programs for professionals who are in touch with children and who are in a position to prevent and if not prevent, identify victims at a very early stage, and that is very important. We have, as I said before, in our campaign also put a lot of emphasis on the need to provide children with tools to protect themselves, and therefore I would like to refer to this campaign also as an empowering campaign. And in order to make this campaign work in that respect, I think our material, which we developed, for instance, the booklet Kiko and the Hand and the TV spot, are all tools which one can use in order to empower children and parents also to discuss these matters, and through the discussion prevent the phenomenon to occur. It's really about explaining to a child that the body belongs to the child, herself or himself, and it's nobody else's.
Today you addressed the 6th meeting of the Network of Contact Parliamentarians to Stop Sexual Violence Against Children. You emphasised that their help is crucial in stepping up the pace to mobilise actions against sexual violence. What, in your opinion, are the main difficulties that parliamentarians may face in convincing their governments to sign and ratify the Lanzarote Convention?
Well, I think that in a number of states there will be resistance based on purely technical issues. Technical in the sense that it requires changes in legislation, which must be examined by the lawyers and must be, put into the context of the national legislation. A number of really very concrete measures have to be taken. The functioning of the justice system has to be made child-friendly, and that has implications, sometimes even financial implications. And it also, in particular, talking about financial implications, one can also think of the quality of services provided, social services who are involved in processes concerning child sexual abuse. So, I mean, there are obviously a number of let's say, technical arguments, but perhaps beyond that, there is still, even if I've seen progress, there is still a denial of the problem. People just don't want to admit that this phenomenon exists to that extent, that it occurs very often in a family environment, that the extent to which we have assessed to exist is real. I mean, the first reaction is very often negative. That has also implications for the legislator, because maybe as it is not so obvious and it's something which you don't want to really talk about, then why should you give it a priority when your agenda is so busy in terms of legislation process? So sometimes it is not given the necessary priority. So there are many reasons, and situations are different in different countries. But whatever the reasons are, they are not excuses. They cannot be excuses. The facts are there. It's a real phenomenon, increasingly developing, also through the dangers of which internet creates, but can also help to solve, by the way. I think that the fact that the parliamentarians are so committed, and that's something I witnessed this afternoon in the meeting we had, is something which can make an enormous difference, because they can convince government that something must be done. We can't sit back and just let things happen because we don't know exactly what is happening.
Well, thank you very much for these observations. Thank you for sharing this with us.
It's a pleasure.